Robert Morgan. We're talking again today about the history of the Coptic Church. We stopped last time at the story of Saint Mark, the evangelist, and we were talking about how he came to Egypt and how the Holy Family visited Egypt, considering Egypt is a holy land, same as Jerusalem and Palestine, all this land that Jesus went in and lived in. So Egypt is also Holy Land. St. Mark actually is always painted or depicted with a lion at his feet. This is also always mentioned in any picture of St. Mark. He's always drawn with a lion at his feet. I found that interesting and I wanted to know why. This is mentioned in one of the books because he started his Bible with recounting the story of St. John the Baptist. It's mentioned also in the Bible, "Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his paths straight." It was also mentioned that Venice had long before adopted the winged lion as their logo, so they combined the picture of St. Mark with the lion. Actually, the church that St. Mark founded in Egypt differs very little from the church that we see today. Our church, the Coptic Church, is very dogmatic. We follow intentionally what our fathers and our original founders started as a church in Egypt. We have the 7 sacraments, so this is what we follow. The Church of Egypt has differed very little or not at all from the original church that was there 2,000 years ago. We held on to all the teachings of the church. The only differences that we see between today and 2,000 years ago is that we have longer fasts, which is very well known for the Coptic Church. We fast about more than 200 days of the year. This is including Wednesdays and Fridays and all the big fasts and Apostles' fast and everything. Originally, the men only used to fast 40 hours between between the Good Friday, and the resurrection on Sunday morning. So this was the extent of their fasting then. And there was no monks and nuns back then. The monks and nuns started later on in history. Worthy to mention that Egypt at that time was under Roman occupation, under the Roman emperor. At the year 40 AD, it was Emperor Claudius who reigned from Rome. And of course, he was not a Christian. They were all pagans, and the national religion of the empire was paganism. They worshipped idols. They had common idols or common gods between them and the Greeks, which the Romans adopted from the Greeks, and they gave them different names and different attributes, or they had similarities between them. The Greek community was very pronounced in Egypt. They had their language, they had their heritage, they were very influential. By the time of the Roman conquests and the occupation of Egypt, the Greeks had resigned to a life of just making money, basically, and philosophy, and they were not interested in no more conquest, no more fighting. So the Romans took over basically the old world at the time and had occupied Egypt. Egypt was a very rich country. It is mentioned at the time that the population of Egypt was between 12 and 20 million. So it was a very well-populated country, very rich with its, it was very agricultural. So it was a very rich country that basically fed most of the known world with its wheat and its products that it exported to Rome, actually. Their ships were always exporting wheat from Egypt to feed the empire. It was called the breadbasket of the modern world. Pope Anianus, as I mentioned, was considered like the second pope after Saint Mark. He was not. He was the first after Saint Mark, but he's considered, his count in the popes of Egypt is the second. So he's the second pope after Saint Mark. He came from 68 AD to 82. He reigned on the See of Saint Mark. Saint Mark actually consecrated several priests and one pope, which is Anianus. They carried on the faith after Saint Mark. The church grew. Christians were considered as an offshoot of Judaism. They were not at the beginning like considered as Christians. Nobody knew what Christians it was. They were not even called Christians. They were considered followers of the way, which is followers of Christianity or the way of Christ. But they were not considered by any means Christians. They were not even called Christians. They were considered as part of the Jewish community, and because mostly they were Jews. They were part of the Jewish community. So they, if anything happened to the Jews, they were taken along with them. If the Jews were persecuted, they were persecuted along with them. They were considered more dangerous than the Jews because they were different, so they considered it an offshoot of the Judaism. It's worthy to mention here how Saint Mark was martyred in Egypt. Actually in Alexandria. It was during the feast of Serapis in Alexandria in 68 AD. St. Mark was very fervent in preaching Christianity to everybody in Egypt. He took the chance that there was a feast for the pagan god Serapis in Alexandria and started preaching everybody. And large numbers of pagans became Christians, and the Christian community was really growing the glory of God and his preaching of St. Mark. The pagans aggravated by him. Since they were the majority, they started to fight back, and they started to recognize the Christian community as a growing threat to them and to power in Alexandria. So during that time, 68 AD, actually in May of 68 AD, they grabbed him, beating him, and they dragged him through the streets of Alexandria. He was badly torn, badly hurt, and dragging him all over the streets of Alexandria, yelling and screaming and really torturing him, wanting to kill him. At the end of the day, they got tired of this sport and just threw him in jail till the next day. In some accounts, it was mentioned that an angel appeared to him and strengthened him and healed his wounds. But the next day again, the pagan community of Alexandria at the time took him out of jail and dragged him through the streets and resumed their sport of hurting and torturing him. They wanted to actually burn him, but it rained really vigorously at the time and put out their fires. From the beating and the hurting, they continued on him until he died in their hands. The Christian community took chance that they were occupied and they wanted to burn his body, and they snatched it and took it to the church that they had in a place called Bukalia, and they buried him there. It is well known that the body of Saint Mark stayed in Egypt until about the 6th century, and it was taken from the church at the time and smuggled to Venice, where it stayed actually in Venice till the 20th century, where our Saint Pope Kyrillos the Sixth was able to bring back his remains and his body and bury it under our cathedral in Cairo, in Abbasiyah, Cairo, where it remains till today. It's amazing his story, and it's amazing his work in Egypt that remained, actually the Christians remained in Egypt till now is amazing. Several emperors ruled Rome at the time, like one after the other, and they all had the same agenda, where Egypt was for them basically a province where they made money. They took the wealth of Egypt and imported it into their empire. Just to mention a few of them: Emperor Claudius, Emperor Nero, came during that time. The second Pope on Egypt was Pope Anianos. After Pope Anianos, Pope Avilas came. He took the See of St. Mark at 83 AD. He stayed till 95 AD. During the first century in Egypt, life as a Christian or as a believer in God was really tough. Persecution never stopped. Persecution actually started from that time during the inception of Christianity in Egypt, and it's continuing with us till today. It's nothing new to us. The Copts or Egyptian Christians have always seen persecution, and it was no different back then. Just mentioning or to be known as a Christian could get you killed or at least beaten or thrown in jail. So this is our history up until the first century under Roman occupation. Thank you, until next time.